The Global Chess League tournament in Dubai witnessed an exciting showdown between two legendary chess players, Viswanathan Anand and Magnus Carlsen. Both competitors boast an impressive record of being 5-time world champions, adding an extra layer of anticipation and excitement to their encounter. Anand, hailing from India, has long been celebrated for his strategic brilliance and impeccable game sense. His consistent performance and numerous victories have firmly established him as one of the greatest chess players in history. On the other hand of the board stands Carlsen, the Norwegian prodigy known for his exceptional talent and relentless pursuit of victory. Carlsen's unyielding determination and ability to convert even the slightest advantage into a win have captivated the chess world. As the two chess titans faced off in the Global Chess League tournament, the anticipation was high, the stakes were high, not just for the players individually, but also for their respective teams in the team-based tournament format. The game between Anand and Carlsen in the tournament would undoubtedly go down in history as a clash for the ages, an epic encounter between two giants of the chess world. But before we dive into the game, chess, just like mathematics, physics, and science, can be complicated. However, there's a fun and easy way to learn more about them. The past few weeks, I've been trying Brilliant.org, an online education platform, which helped me build some foundations for my computer science journey. And I'm also going to explain briefly why Brilliant.org is the best way to learn math, data science, and computer science interactively. Whatever your skill level, Brilliant tailors the content to fit your needs. Upon signing up, you'll have the opportunity to take a brief quiz that tailors the content to your skill level and personal interests. But I hear what you're thinking, what does this all have to do with chess? Chess is all about strategy and pattern recognition, and besides their wide range of courses, I also saw some similarities within the computer science course. I enjoyed the starting computer science courses. The Thinking in Code gave me some solid foundations for computational problem solving. As someone who had zero experience with coding or data, I really liked doing the exercises and it didn't feel boring at all. All exercises felt like a game and was brought in a fun way. I'll be doing more of those and will gradually expand my computer science skills. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/enpassant. or click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Not only will you enjoy some amazing made courses, you'll also be able to support my channel. Now back to the video. Anand opens with pawn to e4, and Carlsen replies with a pawn move to e6, choosing the French defense. After a couple of moves, with Anand opting for knight to c3 and Carlsen going for bishop to b4, the game is transitioned into the French winnower variation. Following the subsequent normal opening moves, Carlsen plays knight to c6, a side variation. Main variations here would be to play knight to e7, queen to c7, or a5. However, Carlsen chooses knight to c6, prompting Anand to move his queen to g4, a typical move in this variation, where the queen attacks the g7 pawn, with plans of pawn to h4 and h5 to launch an attack on the king side later. In response to Anand's queen to g4, Carlsen plays pawn to g6. Anand replies with pawn to h4, to which Carlsen pushes his pawn to h6. Anand proceeds with h5 and Carlsen counters with pawn to g5. Interestingly, last year in the World Blitz Chess Championship, Carlsen played a similar variation with black against Anish Giri and emerged victorious after a long battle. Anand plays pawn to f4 to attack the king side. In his game against Anish Giri, Carlsen played pawn to f5 at this point, but today decides to play queen to a5, attacking the c3 pawn and aiming for a queen fork with the queen check on e1. Also putting pressure on the a1 rook. One could see a surprise on Anand's face upon witnessing queen to a5. Remaining composed, Anand develops his bishop to d2 to support the c3 pawn. Carlsen responds by playing pawn to f5, and Anand brings his queen to g3. If Anand had captured the f6 pawn, Magnus would have recaptured it with his knight, giving him good play. After Anand's queen to g3, Carlsen closes the king side with his pawn to g4, leaving very little for Anand to exploit in that area. Realizing his limited chances on the king side, Anand captures the c5 pawn. After a few minor piece developments by both players, Anand requests a queen trade on f2, and Carlsen gladly accepts. At this point, the position seems slightly better for black, and white needs to play well to secure a draw. Now, Anand shifts his focus to the queen side in the following moves, playing pawn to a4 and rook to b1, while Carlsen also coordinates his rook. Anand maneuvers his bishop to c1, intending to place it on a3 and then d6. Meanwhile, Carlsen maneuvers his knight via c6 with the plan of d8 and b7. After Anand's bishop comes to b4 to attack the a5 knight, Carlsen calmly supports his knight by moving the d8 knight to b7, and Anand centralizes his knight to d4. Carlsen plays rook to b8, aiming to play knight to c5. This way, even if Anand captures one of the knights, Carlsen can open the b file for some active play. In the meantime, Carlsen anxiously watches his teammates' game on the main board, contemplating whether he should push for a victory or settle for a draw based on their positions. Anand plays knight to b3 in response to Carlsen's rook to b8. Carlsen avoids the knight trade and plays knight to c4. Anand trades the c4 knight with his bishop and advances his knight to d4. Anand tries to open the queenside with his pawn moved to a5, but Carlsen seems content with the closed position and plays pawn to b5. Anand shifts his focus to the d file, realizing that the game will be played there going forward. Anand shifts his focus to the d file, realizing that the game will be played there going forward. He plays knight to e2 and doubles his rooks on the d file in the next few moves. Magnus Carlsen suddenly turns away from his game and starts looking at the big board to see what is happening in other games. He appears comfortable in this game, as he can easily secure a draw. However, he must decide whether to take some risk to give himself a good chance of defeating the former 5-time world champion from India, considering his teammate's position in the team tournament. Meanwhile, Anand looks a bit relaxed and takes a sip of water, knowing that everything is under control, at least for now. But we all know what kind of character Magnus Carlsen possesses. He is someone who constantly tests his opponents and converts even the slightest advantage into a win. Carlsen goes for the win and plays rook to d8 to trade one of the rooks. After the rooks are traded on d4, Anand takes another rook to d4. Here, Magnus Carlsen makes a strong pawn sacrifice by playing pawn to g3. If Anand captures the g3 pawn with his king, Carlsen can play rook to g8 and later snatch the g2 pawn. If Anand captures the g3 pawn with his knight, Carlsen can play rook to g8 and then g4, potentially making all the white pieces inactive. Upon seeing this, Anand decides not to take the pawn and plays his king to g1. Anand seems disappointed with himself for allowing Carlsen to play g3. However, he quickly composes himself and starts thinking deeply again. Now Magnus plays rook to g8, intending to capture the weak f4 and h5 pawns. Anand plays his knight to d4, attacking the bishop on c6. Carlsen pins the knight by playing rook to d8. Anand cannot capture the c6 bishop as he would lose his rook on d2. Instead, Anand plays bishop to d6, blocking the rook's path and avoiding the pin. Now Carlsen's c6 bishop is hanging, so he plays bishop to e4, and Anand brings his bishop back to b4. Carlsen plays rook to d5, planning knight to d8 and c6. Meanwhile, Anand brings his king to support the unsupported rook on d2. After Carlsen plays knight to c6, Anand cannot take the knight on c6 since after the rook trade, Anand would lose his g2 pawn. Instead, Anand plays his knight to e2. After the rooks are traded on d2, Carlsen captures the g2 pawn and Anand takes the g3 pawn. The position now appears to be equal. Carlsen and Anand repeat a couple of moves before Carlsen plays king to e8 to bring his king into the game. After careful consideration, Carlsen plays knight to e7, aiming to place his knight on a more active square d5. Anand realizes that if the knight reaches d5, his chances of defending will diminish. Therefore, Anand trades the knight on e7 and moves his king to c1 and b2, while Carlsen brings his king to d7, c6, and d5. After maneuvering for some time, Carlsen plays the most crucial move, pawn to b4. If Carlsen captures the b4 pawn after Anand's c3 move, the game will end in a draw as Carlsen won't have a way to penetrate white's territory. Carlsen plays king to d4, and Anand gives a check with c3, to which Magnus responds with king to d3. Meanwhile, Anand plays pawn to b5 and pushes his a pawn to the 8th rank. After Carlsen plays king to d2, Anand plays pawn to a7. Carlsen plays bishop to d5. Now Anand has a good drawing chance where he can give a check on f1 and then take the black king away from d2, allowing him to play knight to g3 again. However, Anand misses this opportunity for a draw and plays knight to f5. Carlsen captures the knight and Anand plays pawn to e6 and then e7. Meanwhile, Carlsen plays pawn to b4 and captures a c3 pawn with a check, followed by pawn to c2. Anand plays pawn to a8 and promotes it to a queen, feeling a sigh of relief as he sees a stalemate tactic. After Magnus grabs the queen on a8 with his bishop, Anand can capture the queen on e8. When Carlsen takes a queen on c1, Anand can play queen to e2 and force a stalemate. Seeing this position on the board, both 5-time world champions smile at each other. After some deep thinking, Carlsen finds a way to continue the game and plays bishop to e4. Anand has another good chance to secure a draw by playing his queen to d8 and b6. However, Anand fails to find the queen to b6 move under time pressure and makes an error by playing queen to d4. Now Carlsen plays the under promotion move, promoting his pawn to a knight on c1, giving a check to the king on a2. After the king moves away, Carlsen pushes his pawn to c3 and c2, and on seeing this, Anand resigned. This game showcased the remarkable skills and competitive spirit of both players, each employing their unique strategies and maneuvers to gain an advantage on the board. In the end, Carlsen's resourcefulness and ability to capitalize on even the smallest opportunities proved decisive. He executed a series of well-calculated moves, gradually outmaneuvering Anand and seizing control of the position. Despite Anand's valiant efforts to defend, Carlsen's relentless pressure ultimately led to his triumph.